You could eat a full hot meal from a vending machine, ride a train above 3rd Avenue, then buy rare books for $1 just blocks from Times Square. That New York? Gone. In this video, we're diving into 12 things you'll never see in the city again. Lost places, vanished habits, and moments that defined an era. Some disappeared quietly. Others were ripped from the skyline. And one might still be hiding in plain sight. Let's take a walk through the New York that's no longer there but never really left. Once considered one of the most breathtaking train stations in America, the original Pennsylvania station stood as a towering symbol of Beaux-Arts grandeur. Its marble columns and vast glass ceilings welcomed millions, giving travelers a cathedral-like entrance into New York City. But by 1963, it was torn down in the name of progress, replaced by the soulless infrastructure we know today. The demolition sparked public outrage and ultimately gave birth to the city's modern historic preservation movement. It wasn't just a building that disappeared, it was a turning point, a warning that even beauty wasn't safe in the face of development. Imagine sliding a nickel into a glass door and pulling out a steaming hot slice of pie or a fresh sandwich. No cashier, no waiting. That was the magic of the Automat, especially the iconic Horn and Hardart locations that dotted the city throughout the mid-20th century. By the 1960s, they were still a go-to for students, workers, and tourists alike. But as fast food chains and changing tastes took hold, the Automats faded. By the 1980s, they were nearly extinct. What remains is a memory of a futuristic dining concept that once felt like the city's most democratic restaurant. In the early 1960s, the Bronx briefly became home to an ambitious dream, Freedomland USA, a theme park designed to showcase American history through immersive attractions and staged events. You could pan for gold, ride a riverboat, or even witness a reenacted Great Chicago Fire. But the dream was short-lived. Opened in 1960 and closed just 4 years later, Freedomland was undercut by financial issues, poor planning, and the looming shadow of the soon-to-be-built Co-op City. Today, few remember it, but for a moment, it was New York's answer to Disneyland. Before sleek subways and Ubers, the 3rd Avenue elevated train roared above the streets of Manhattan, a rattling steel serpent that ran from the Bowery to the Bronx. For decades, it was the pulse of the East Side, carrying workers, dreamers, and the daily chaos of New York life. But by the 1950s and early 1960s, the elevated tracks were dismantled section by section in the name of modernization and better views. Its removal reshaped the city's skyline, and silence returned to streets that had long lived under the rumble of trains. But for older New Yorkers, the elevated train isn't just history, it's the sound of a city that never stopped moving. Step into the electric circus, and you were stepping out of reality. Located on St. Lev Reporting Line, Mark's Place. This wasn't just a nightclub, it was a neon-drenched explosion of lights, music, and mind-bending visuals. From the late 1960s until its closing in 1971, it was the beating heart of counterculture, cool hosting acts like the Velvet Underground and crowds chasing the edge of art and experience. It was chaos. It was beautiful. And like all things ahead of their time, it didn't last. But the electric circus left behind a cultural footprint that still echoes in the city's underground scenes today. For 114 days, New York City, a place powered by headlines, went nearly silent. The newspaper strike of 1962 and 63 halted the presses of every major paper: the Times, the Post, the Daily News. Kiosks stood empty. Newsboys had nothing to sell. The city suddenly had no voice. It was a moment that showed just how fragile and essential journalism really was. When the strike ended, nothing in the print industry was quite the same again. Once known as the Jewish Alps, the Borscht Belt in the Catskill Mountains was the go-to escape for thousands of New York families from the 1930s through the 1960s. Think talent shows, comedians like Jerry Seinfeld's early predecessors, and sprawling resorts like Grossinger's and the Concord. It was summer camp for adults, glamorous, loud, and full of life. But as air travel got cheaper and tastes changed, the crowds vanished. By the 1980s, most of these once bustling resorts stood abandoned. What remains now? are ruins and memories of a golden era of vacationing that shaped generations. In the mid-20th century, the Meatpacking District was exactly what the name promised. A gritty industrial zone filled with slaughterhouses, meatpacking plants, and the stench of raw animal product. Over 200 meat businesses operated there, and the streets ran with grease, not glamour. Fast forward to today, and it's one of Manhattan's trendiest neighborhoods, home to designer boutiques, art galleries, and rooftop bars. The transformation began in the 1990s, but its bones go back much further. If you know where to look, you can still see the hooks, bricks, and loading docks from a very different New York. In the late 1960s, Soho wasn't an art district, it was abandoned. Factories had shut down, leaving behind massive, empty lofts with good light and cheap rent. Artists moved in illegally, turning these forgotten spaces into studios, homes, and eventually, a full-blown creative movement. It was raw, it was real, and it gave birth to one of the most influential bohemian scenes in New York history. But like so many things in the city, success led to change. By the 1980s, galleries replaced squatters, and rising rents pushed out the very people who gave Soho its soul. When the police raided the Stonewall Inn in 1969, they had no idea they were about to spark a revolution. The protests that followed became the birth of the modern LGBTQ+ rights movement. But the original bar itself? It didn't survive much longer. The first Stonewall closed shortly after the riots and went through multiple lives before being restored decades later. Today's version honors that history, but the physical place where it all began is gone. What remains is its legacy, louder than ever. Prospect Park, Brooklyn's crown jewel, was once a perfect mix of wild nature and Victorian elegance. Designed in the 1860s by Olmsted and Vaux, the same duo behind Central Park, it was filled with intricate bridges, rustic shelters, and romantic pathways. But by the mid-20th century, renovations, neglect, and modern improvements erased many of those original touches. Some structures were demolished, others rebuilt with little of their past charm. Today's park is still beautiful, but much of its original soul was quietly rewritten. Before streaming, before downloads, there was Times Square, packed with record shops blasting music onto the streets. From the 1950s through the early 80s, this was paradise for music lovers. Wall-to-wall, LPs, bootlegs, posters, and the thrill of the hunt. But the digital era, rising rents, and changing habits hit hard. Most of those legendary stores are long gone, and with them, a unique culture of discovery and obsession. What replaced them? Chain stores and LED billboards louder. Maybe, but not the same. New York in the 1960s wasn't perfect, but it had a heartbeat you could feel in the streets. You could ride an elevated train, grab a hot meal from an Automat, and stumble into a record store playing something you'd never heard before. The city was rough, loud, beautiful, and alive in a way that's hard to describe today. Many of these places are gone. The smells, the sounds, even the rhythm of daily life, they've been replaced by something faster, sleeker, but maybe not better. And sometimes, all it takes is a photo, a memory, or a story from your grandparents to realize a lot of what made New York magical didn't survive the march of time. So now we ask you, would you have liked to live in that New York? Do you have memories from your parents or grandparents of those days? We'd love to hear them in the comments. And if this video brought something back, a feeling, a memory, even just a smile, leave a like and share it. It helps more people discover these forgotten pieces of the city. Thanks for watching. And hey, maybe some things are worth remembering.